Joining me now on the Daily Ledger, Page 5 beat, President of Wilsey Asset Management, Brent Wilsey. So, Brent, this whole issue, I get it from a conservative standpoint. You don't like government interfering with privately owned companies, especially ones in the United States. But to some degree, the government might have to step in when it comes to practices like Google, especially when there's an issue of national security. Would you agree with that?
I definitely would. I mean, it is kind of a shame that they're not doing business with the United States, drop that contract, but are doing things with China. I think they may not, they probably don't understand how China's economy works, that a lot of their stuff does go through the government, does get to the military. So you have this different situation here, and people don't realize that, well, gee, I thought Google just did search. Google does a lot more than that. So we got to be careful. I mean, I keep saying we got to be careful of China. They do have a different agenda, and we got to be careful of them.
They do have a different agenda, and I think that's really important to note, too, is that Google, by practicing with China, not the United States, is essentially saying we're going to take China's values over the United States. So what reasoning does Google have to help someone like China and not the Pentagon?
Well, I'm not sure why that is that way. And it's just kind of difficult to kind of understand what's going on behind closed doors with Google and China. So this just came out. So I'm kind of curious to see what's going to develop here, because I'm a little bit worried about this and many other things with China.
And just big picture, too, I think it's really interesting in the fact that oftentimes it's conservatives that are critical of Google, and part of it is because of censorship issues. So in a way, it's almost ironic, the fact that because of Google's actions, they may be walking themselves into more regulations based on people who otherwise don't usually like regulations. So let's take facial recognition software, for example, and China's willingness to implement that, or Google's willingness to implement that in China. What does that say about Google? Are they essentially helping China suppress speech and assist what would otherwise be known as a communist government?
I'm not sure what it says. I mean, because it is kind of strange. And when we talk about this, I would not think that China would want that. I know I get concerned about that. And, we hear these stories about privacy and so forth. I'm so surprised that China is allowing things like this and Google's trying to do it. It's just getting so complex anymore. You don't know what is good and what is bad anymore. It's a very difficult situation. But again, I'll come back to the thing. I would rather err on the side of caution when it comes to China. And I think Google could be doing more than they should be doing with China.
And this kind of comes back to the issue of them stealing intellectual property, right? I mean, we always talk about the F-35 jet example, and that's, by the way, a $200 billion project, I believe, that was essentially stolen by China, and they made their own with maybe a couple minor tweaks. Is this something that's an ongoing problem between the Chinese and the United States government?
Well, I know it's a big factor when we talk about the trade talks that we want to prevent them from, stealing our technology and so forth. That has happened in the past. If we let it, it will happen in the future. And we got to be very careful, because we have a lot of trade secrets here that we don't want to give away. And we talk about different things with Huawei and them being the 5G and all this other stuff going on. We got to be careful of communications with China, because they will, I believe, steal our information if they can get it and say, well, sorry, we can't control them.
Yeah, it's definitely a scary time, and a lot of it happening behind the scenes. But Brent, thank you for joining us tonight.
Want to see more videos like this? Click on the link below and subscribe to One American News on YouTube, and call your cable provider and kindly demand that One American News is added to your lineup. Call and subscribe today.